Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Podcast Unflooded. Today, I am joined by special guest Melon Speedruns. Now, Melon, you've done a lot of work in the community. Would you mind introducing yourself and the kind of stuff that you've worked on for people that might not know?
Hello, my name is Melon. Yeah, basically I'm a game modder. So what I usually do is I take Zelda games, Mario games, pretty much a bit of everything, and I make them better by adding levels, items, weapons, whatever you want. And essentially, recently I started about 2 years ago. I started doing game development professionally. So I'm really glad of where I am right now. But back in the day, I used to do Super Mario 64 online, and I also worked on the Ship of Harkinian, which is a Zelda PC port for Ocarina of Time. And that's pretty much where I am right now. I'm just working on a lot of projects, and it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess I'm really curious to hear just about you started in modding and now you're doing game development. Do you feel like that pipeline? I guess what have you learned along the way? What gave you the confidence to move into actually developing your own projects?
Well, the thing is that it's kind of a sad story. Is that with modding, you cannot really like sell your work because you're modding a game that is owned by already a company. So I always wanted to make my own games, and be able to sell them on Steam, itch.io, and other other storefronts. So, but modding learn taught me a lot about game making, and then I was able to use that experience to make actual games.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Well, it's a great way to start. I mean, you've been learning off some of the greatest games. I think both Ocarina of Time and Mario 64, especially like those are historic games. I guess I'm curious
Yeah.
about what has modding those different games taught you about game development.
It mostly comes down to well, when I mod games, I usually do it like with levels and objects. I don't really mod code because modding code in a video game is extremely hard, so I don't do that. But like, let's say for Mario, I'm able to add levels, and I can understand how a specific thing in the game is coded, and then I can replicate that mechanic in my own indie game. So
Mm-hmm.
it really teaches me a lot about how games are made without having to make your own game from scratch.
Mm-hmm. Well, smart. I mean, there's so much that I feel like. I mean, it's a little bit different, but I feel like as I've been working on Wind Waker Unflooded, there's so much that just studying the original maps of the Wind Waker and trying to replicate what works about those maps. And I'm still learning a lot. There's still a lot I don't know, but it's great to have a reason to just have a deep dive into an old game. And I think modding
Yeah.
is a great reason to just kind of have a reason to research the original material. I
Yeah.
guess.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious about because I know that you've had some stuff in mind to kind of bring up about like some of the beta and cut content from Wind Waker. Um,
Yeah.
I'm curious what you're thinking on that.
Well, what I'm thinking is that, like, Wind Waker's development was pretty hellish, to say the least. Like, that's something that's like known. They kind of rushed the game to make sure it was like early on into the GameCube's life, and because of that, they had to cut a bunch of content. And I'm not sure if this is official, but basically, we know like that Hyrule is something that was cut from the game. Is that something you know about?
I only know from basically what's in the concept art from Hyrule Historia. My
Okay, yeah,
understanding is there's not much to this is why I'm curious to talk to you. I mean, I've seen what's on the cutting room floor. I know that there's some models that didn't make another final version of the game. But as far as I know, I mean, Hyrule Historia shows us that fishhook concept, right? The idea that you might be
yeah.
underwater somewhere and could teleport above ground. So it seems that that kind of going between water levels, under and over the ocean, it seems like that could have been a bigger concept. But I don't know really how know much. I don't really know how much there is to garner from that.
To me, it just sounds like they wanted to do a Link to the Past again with Wind Waker, where you had the world above and the world below,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the original concept with the fish hook and all. And then like they ended up not doing that because of time constraint. And then when they wanted to do Twilight Princess, they wanted to do the same thing again. They wanted a dark world which is the Twilight world, and the Light world. But again, as we all know, they reused the maps from the Light world for the Twilight world. And I think that they had the same issue with Wind Waker, is that they wanted to make two worlds but couldn't do it, so they just reused the map. And
Mm-hmm.
in Wind Waker's case, they couldn't reuse the map, so they just made it a single map that represents the whole kingdom.
Yeah, I think that's interesting that you bring
And
up
yeah,
because definitely like a theme I think in the Zelda series are those multiple worlds, and I guess I love that Ocarina of Time it does that too with the present and the past, right? Or the
yeah,
past and future, however you want to call it. But I feel like doing
yeah.
that. What was that?
Oh no, no, I was just saying, I was just agreeing with you.
Hmm. Well, I guess I feel like it's really effective to use the same map, altering it in a couple ways. Not like that about the Light World and Twilight Worlds, in Twilight Princess, for instance. But for Wind Waker, it's yeah, it's like you can't just if it's above the ocean or below the ocean, you can't just repeat the same map to get that. It has to be a new, it has to be a new model.
Yeah, and I guess this is kind of what you're doing, right? You're just imagining what if they had both, what if they had both maps at the same time and they could they had more time in development. They would have spent it into more polish, but I think they would have realized the idea more of having two worlds. So much so
Hmm.
that when I was a kid, I was always thinking um, that they would re-release Wind Waker on the Wii when the Wii came out with extra content, and that extra content will be like the actual Hyrule map that you could explore.
Man, I
That was
wish.
my idea as a kid. But they released the Wii U version and it was the same game content wise, except for the Switch sale, I guess.
Yeah, it's not super different. I appreciate that they did the remake, and I appreciate some of their changes. Some of them are I think are silly, but I don't know. Like
Yeah,
I do wish we had gotten that Hyrule. Of course, I wish for it so hard that I worked on Wind Waker Unflooded, but I've definitely kind of felt aware that the way that I'm making the map, I think is different than the way they would have developed it. Like I think if that had been in the GameCube game, um, I mean, like this is speculation, but like I think the idea of this open world that you can go between, it works on the overworld, but I kind of have a feeling that if we got more of Sunken Hyrule, it would have been segmented. You would have been able to go
yeah.
down at certain points, but I don't think it would have been a huge open world under the ocean. Just I don't know if the GameCube could have done that.
I think they realized that fully with Skyward Sword. I think
Mm-hmm.
Skyward Sword is literally what Wind Waker's Hyrule ended up being.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the fish? When you think about it, the fish hook element is exactly the same as the bird statues in Skyward Sword. Talk to the bird statue, you get shot into the sky, and then now you're above the ocean, which is, well, in Skyward Sword it's the clouds, but
Mm-hmm.
replace the clouds with water and replace the bird statue with like a fish hook, and you got essentially the same mechanics they were thinking about all the way in 2000.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great comparison. I guess
So
I've excuse me. Yeah, I was just thinking about like what Wind Waker could have been. I do think Skyward Sword is the closest example that we have of what its Hyrule would have been like. That's a great comparison.
yeah, and I feel like Skyward Sword draws a lot closer to Wind Waker than most people realize, mainly because of like switching between two maps that are it's the same world. It's not like light world, dark world. It's the same world, but it's like two different sections of the world. And I have a feeling maybe during development in Skyward Sword, they had water instead of the clouds.
That'd be interesting. I don't know how much we know about the concept, like concept art or like beta stuff of Skyward Sword.
I don't think we know a lot, but what I mean, like really, really early on, I think they had the idea of having water, like before concept art was even made, because when you look at it, like um, in Skyward Sword, there's this section of the map which is like always in a storm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in Wind Waker, you don't really have that. You don't really have a one section of the map which is always stormy. Like it's always either the day, night, and then you have the section in the game which is always rainy. But that's like a story segment. It's not location based.
Right, right.
And I'm thinking, what if they had this idea of expanding upon that, where different regions in Wind
Mm.
Waker had different weather effects.
Mm.
Like they kind of did it with the ice island, the ice reef,
Right.
or I don't know the name. So they had this where if you're in the zone, it's always snowy and it's
Mm.
always like a blizzard going on. But I think they wanted maybe to expand that more with maybe there's an area that's always in the storm. Maybe the volcano has volcanic ash around you, and they kind of tried to do that in Skyward Sword with the rain section, but it was too different to be like fully fleshed out, I guess.
Mm. That's a great comparison point because I know that I mean I think there's a statement from Enuma about the cut content of Wind Waker. There's a statement that like well it just went into the later games. Like if you're missing that content, it does exist just in later games, so we shouldn't grieve too hard for it. But I guess like I've always assumed that that was more of a statement of on the cut dungeons because we know that there could have been more dungeons in Wind Waker, and so I just assumed that their mechanics or design were became something else in another game. But just the fact that like overworld concepts and game concepts just from the Wind Waker, even like the Thunderhead in Skyward Sword, right? The idea of a stormy section. That's interesting. I never thought about that being, a contender for Wind Waker's cut content.
Yeah, no, it's definitely what I think most people would assume is that when you hear cut content, like what's the first thing you think of? Like probably dungeons or items.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like you have to twist your mind and try to thinking about the opposite
Mm-hmm.
of what content would be. So for me, I'm thinking about overworld. I'm talking about possibly not even enemies. I'm talking about smaller stuff, but that play a big part of the game. Um, like we know, you had the Terramin in Wind Waker in before the actual Wind Waker, but I'm guessing the gameplay element of that got transferred to Skyward Sword's harp
Mm-hmm.
because it's kind of like plays, like because the Terramin plays with kind of like with a wave motion.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly what you do in Skyward Sword. You take the remote and you just swing it around. So I feel like this is like they took the original idea and then just polished it and changed the instrument.
That's interesting because I guess I'm curious. With the Wind Waker baton itself, I've always felt like that was kind of a limiting instrument, like musically. Like Ocarina of Time allows you to do a whole scale, right? Like with the ocarina, and same with Majora's Mask. It's the same system. But Wind Waker, like you don't get to play any note. Do you think that that like could have been, you know, something that was cut as well? Just the ability to play just any song you want.
I feel like they experimented that with the game early on, right? But like I think it was too precise. Like you had to put the Wiimote at a specific position and then press the A button. And the harp has like what 15 different ropes on it or
Yeah,
something.
something
So
like
yeah,
that.
it would have
Yeah.
been impossible to handle.
Mm-hmm.
So they just like had it like just wiggle the remote around in sync with the NPC.
Yeah, that would have been hard in Skyward Sword. I guess I'm curious because Wind Waker still has like the same number of sticks as Ocarina of Time, so I feel like it could have still had the same amount of precision.
Yeah. There's also this thing where I don't understand why they went with the waggle controls
Mm-hmm.
for the harp, because when you think about it, the only reason when you use the harp in Skyward Sword, right? The joystick is used to move Link around.
Mm-hmm.
But is there like a use for that in the game to move Link around while you play the harp? Like is there like a puzzle you have to do that somewhere, or I don't remember there
Yeah, I
being
don't
a
know if there
puzzle for
is.
that. So my guess is that early on maybe they had um, plans for either a puzzle with you moving around, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe they had it was the opposite where you could play with a joystick, but then they couldn't figure it out, so they just made it a wiggle movement, and then
Mm-hmm.
they allowed you to move with the joystick. My guess is that maybe they had a mini game at some point where you would play the harp, right? And
Mm-hmm.
animals would follow you,
Mm.
but you needed to play the harp like continuously and have the animals follow you through like a maze or something.
I do really wonder because I think Skyward Sword reeks of cut content.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just with its I think it has a great amount of dungeons, but when you start getting into the Silent Realms, you start looking at the islands in the sky, and there's not many up there. To me, it really feels like there was stuff left out of that
I
game.
I feel there was supposed to be more dungeons
Yeah.
um, in the sky. So in the sky we have the Triforce dungeon in
Hmm.
Skyloft, but I feel like we could have got a mini dungeon every time we went back to the clouds to put the slate in Skyloft,
Yeah.
but we didn't. Like it's always like go to Skyloft, place the thing, go back down.
Yep.
But I
I
feel
think
like
you're
there
right.
could have been like a dungeon in between that.
I think about it seems like even Phantom Hourglass has that structure, right? Like you go do a dungeon, then you come back to the main dungeon, where you get a new piece
Yeah,
piece of the map. Then you go out do another dungeon. Skyward Sword could have had that.
exactly.
I like that formula.
Yeah, no, I really like that as well. And spoiler alert, Phantom Hourglass has the fish hook that from Wind Waker that they cut down. So I don't know if you remember, but you could fish treasure, and it
Oh
when
right,
you do that, it plays a mini game where you go deep into the sea, get the chest, and then have to pull it back out.
you're right. You actually get to look under the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
I'm guessing that this is probably where maybe they even reused assets from Wind Waker for that mini game, and we just don't know it.
Yeah, we want to know.
But it would make sense.
Yeah, I know they reused. There's some terrain assets that I recognize in Skyward Sword. There's a certain rock texture in the Lanayru region that I was like, oh,
Oh,
I'm
really?
that's the exact same rocks from Hyrule Field in Wind Waker. So it's
Oh, really?
I know even stuff with those textures like they got
Oh my god.
reused. It'd be hard to do that in Twilight Princess, I'm sure. But Skyward Sword has
Right.
just enough
Well,
of a similar art style where they could
yeah.
adapt it.
I'm thinking right now. The pirates in Wind Waker.
Hmm.
They have a sword right on their back and on their sides. Do you
Hmm.
know what the texture for the sword is?
I don't off the top of my head.
It's a Nintendo GameCube logo.
Oh, that's awesome.
The sword is actually just a Nintendo GameCube logo, but like plastered on the sword and zoomed all the way in so it looks white.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So
I never knew that.
if you go in an emulator and dump the texture for the sword, it's just a GameCube logo.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I don't
I
know why
never
they
realized
did
that.
that. It's so funny. So like when making an HD texture pack, a friend of mine actually just they showed me that and I was like, "What? Where is that from?" And
That's
they told me it
hilarious.
was the sword. And I wouldn't believe them, but no, it's true.
I guess I want to talk about that too. There's some really good texture packs. I mean, for Wind Waker, of course, there's, now with the randomizer, there's a lot of custom characters. But I think about what is it, Hypatia's texture pack for the.
That's the friend I was talking about. Hypatia is a
Yeah.
good friend of mine, and they're really a good artist.
That's an amazing texture pack. I'm really impressed by how much it emulates the original art style with that painterly feel, though.
Yeah, and makes everything HD as well. Like it looks like almost like the texture pack did a better job than Wind Waker HD because
Yeah.
as we know, Wind Waker HD took all the original textures and just AI upscaled them.
Right.
So have them being redrawn like that is really cool. At some point, I really wanted to take her texture pack and add it over the textures of Wind Waker HD because they just look so much better. But I kind of gave up midway because there was like what 400,000 textures in
Ooh.
that game, something
I
like
didn't realize
that.
how many there were.
There's a lot. It's because it's like repetitions of the same texture, but it's a different PNG every time.
That's weird. I
Mm,
mean, that's something I've had to work through with my project a little bit. I have a little bit of repetition whenever I re-import something, just usually with materials. But it's only a couple hundred images, I think, for the textures I've been using for Wind Waker Unflooded, and I'm going through most of the textures in the game. I'm not using them all yet. Hopefully,
yeah.
I'm so excited to like keep digging into the textures that are in Wind Waker because there's so many little things. I'm like, oh, I haven't really played with that yet, and I'm excited just to keep having a reason to dig into what's there.
Yeah, no, no, and 100 texture is really good for your whole map. Like, I will say that is optimized in terms of textures. Now, I don't really know about like the polygon count. Maybe that could be optimized, but in terms of textures, that's really good.
I think it's pretty solid. I mean, and I reuse a lot of assets as well, and I get a lot of mileage just out of a couple of paths and grass and cliffs, and I mean, a lot of that gets reused. It doesn't have to be new
Hmm.
stuff.
No, and while we're talking about the subject of textures, have you seen the Tinkle room in Wind Waker?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I don't know. I have an idea of how it happened. Like they were making like a kind of like an interior,
Mhm.
and one of the developers accidentally overwrote all the textures with the painting.
Mhm.
And then after doing that, they were told, "Oh yeah, scrap the map. We're doing something else for this house."
Mhm.
And then they left it like that in the game files. But
I
what's
like that
funny is
theory. Yeah.
that every single map from Wind Waker is also in Wind Waker HD.
Oh, even
Like
the unused
they're
ones.
still in the game files. Yeah,
That's
they're still in
interesting.
the game files.
That's
Another
interesting.
fact is that Wind Waker in Wind Waker on the GameCube,
Mm.
the credits of the game is actually an MP4 file that they play
Right.
on the GameCube. The MP4 file takes more space than the actual entire game by itself.
That's what I was about to ask. Right. I was like, isn't it bigger than
Yeah,
the
it
actual
takes more
game? That's
space than
crazy.
the actual game. However, it's funny because in the original, if you game use a action replay, you can actually find in the game files the original cutscene that they recorded to be an MP4 file,
Oh
and
wow.
it works perfectly. So I don't know why they just didn't play that cutscene, which was like 2 MB,
Right.
instead of putting a video file for 400 MB. So, fun fact, in Wind Waker HD, that's what they did. They
Mhm.
replaced the MP4 file with the actual unused cutscene, and they
Oh
just
okay.
polished it up so it looks the same.
That makes sense. Cause yeah, I mean, if they have new textures and new lighting, a new lighting engine, you'd have to re-render it.
Yeah, so they would have to remake the MP4 file, but they got lucky that they had the unused cutscene, so they could
Mhm.
just replay that as a cutscene instead of having to re-record an MP4 file.
Yeah. Do you know what was it Mario 3D All Stars that remade Sunshine? Because they have pre-rendered cutscenes as well. Is that just
Yeah,
AI upscaling, or is that
it's a upscaled.
uncompressed? Yeah. Okay, that's what I
It's
thought.
yeah, it's to the point where in on the GameCube, in one of the cutscenes, Flood is like, press the R button to shoot water from my tank.
Mm-hmm.
On the Switch, they just cut that part, so it's like press the button. So they just cut the thing, so it's like press button to do this thing.
That's
It's
hilarious.
so funny. They just cut the button name because it's not the same on Switch. Like on Switch, it's
Yeah.
ZR, not R.
I never
So
got
they
that.
just press that button, and it's so. When I heard that, I thought it was so funny because the voice actor for Flood, I think it was the voice actress even.
Mm-hmm.
They're still around, doing business, so they could have hired her to do
Yeah.
like just voices again for the just one line, but no, they didn't.
That's hilarious.
I think it was just cheaply made.
Mm-hmm. No, I think so. I mean, even Sunshine, right? I think reuses a lot of Mario sound effects. I don't know this for sure, but it sounds like a
It
lot of
is.
reused assets from Mario
It
64.
is. When you sleep in Mario Sunshine, the snoring sound is the same as Mario 64.
That's what I thought. Yeah. A
Yeah.
lot of the jumps too.
I don't know about the jumps. I think those are all new, but
Do you
I
think the
think
jumps
some
are
of
new?
the actions are. I think so. I haven't played Sunshine since.
Okay. I thought they were reused. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. If they're not, that'd be cool though, because then we have higher quality versions of the Mario 64 sound clips.
That's what I thought they were.
Yeah.
I don't know. This isn't coming from someone with expertise. I just played the game. I don't know.
In Melee though, they do use a lot of Mario 64 sound clips,
Oh, I didn't realize that.
but those are uncompressed. So they're the exact same sounds, but just not compressed like on the N64.
That's interesting. Because I really felt like they had a different quality to them.
Yeah, it's the same sounds, just like the original recording of it, not compressed to fit the N64.
That's crazy. There must have been a little like equalization on the original sound as well to cut out data. Because I mean, I don't know. To me, Melee sounds like it has a lot more low end compared to 64.
I think the original Mario 64 sound effects are like 10,000 kilohertz.
Oh.
which is really low. While
Yep.
nowadays we have 48,000,
Mm-hmm.
which is
That's
like
crazy.
what 5 times the quality, something like that.
Right. I mean, I know that I've recorded audio into the megabytes.
Yeah, no.
That's crazy.
So yeah, and also like it's kind of sad though because well, no, actually, while we're talking about melee in Smash Ultimate, they actually have uncompressed voice lines from Ocarina of Time for Young Link.
Oh.
So when Young Link goes yeah yeah,
Right.
and that's extremely compressed on the N64. But
Mm-hmm.
in Smash Ultimate, we have the same sound clips,
Yep.
and they're not compressed. They're the highest quality they can be.
Man, those sound effects, those have been used so many times. I mean, I was thinking about
Oh yeah.
the Game Boy version of A Link to the Past. That's the Ocarina of Time Young Link sounds as well, but super
Same with
compressed.
Minish Cap.
Oh, Mishcap did too. I didn't realize that.
Minish Cap has Young Link's voice. Yeah.
That's awesome. They got so much mileage out of that voice actress.
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah. And it's kind of funny though because I think she didn't voice in Hyrule Warriors when they had Young Link.
Oh, I didn't realize
They
that.
had somebody else do it. But fun fact, in Hyrule Warriors, if you're Young Link, you can evolve into Fierce Deity Link.
Oh,
And
nice,
when you do that during a fight, then it plays the adult Link sounds from Ocarina of Time.
nice.
So
That's
I
awesome.
don't know why they just didn't do the same with Young Link and reuse the sound effects.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, it's weird. Obviously, they had access to the
Yeah,
vault.
yeah. The
That's
Volt.
hilarious. That's hilarious. No, I'm glad that the GameCube. I mean, it feels like it has good enough audio quality that I don't know, like Wind Waker's audio samples. Like I don't know, I
Yeah.
don't feel like those have been compromised.
Slightly, but no, not really.
Yeah, I think they still
Oh,
sound pretty good.
you know the Puppet Ganon fight
Mm-hmm. Of
song?
course.
When it's in its snake form,
Mm-hmm.
there's trumpets playing in the background, and I'll let you guess what those trumpets are.
I don't know.
They're the Hoenn trumpets from Pokemon Emerald.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, they're the exact same instrument
That's
sample, so they're the
crazy,
same Hoenn trumpets. And
man.
that's crazy to me. There's like a lot of Nintendo games like during those times we use so many of the same sound effects.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. It's like there was like an Evangelion N64 game,
Mm-hmm.
and that was using the same sound bank as Mario 64.
That's crazy.
So so when you finish the game, the credits theme is it's like the Mario 64 like strings and
Right.
piano and everything else.
That's crazy because Mario 64 sounds like it has such a unique soundtrack style. Do you know how much carryover there is between it and Ocarina of Time? Because even those games sound very different to me.
Some of the instruments do are the same. I
Mm-hmm.
think the strings from Peach's Castle are the same strings from Hyrule Field.
Oh, okay.
But other than that, I don't know because I haven't messed too much with music. But I know for a fact the Evangelion in 64 music has all the instruments from Mario 64.
That's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Just those sounds are so iconic. I mean, that's such a big part of the yeah, just the feel of the game.
Mm.
Have you done much with like music modding? Maybe not with recomposing, but changing. I don't know if there's an equivalent to like texture packs with soundtracks.
There is, but it has to be in the game. You cannot
Mm-hmm.
do it within emulator.
Mm-hmm.
What I've done though is I've done it multiple times when the music is MP3 files
Mm-hmm.
because that's simple. But when the music is actually like MIDI based, like with like Wind Waker, it
Right.
being MIDI based, it's extremely harder to replace it because of all the commands and notes they have. While if
Right,
it's just an
and it's.
MP3 file, they can just replace the MP3 and GG.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know Wind Waker's like MIDI sequencing. It's like there's a lot of stuff that's cutscene specific. Like it'll repeat a couple measures until you advance to the next dialogue line, and then it'll repeat a couple measures until the next dialogue line. So there's a lot of just
Yeah,
very context sensitive music that
yeah.
I don't know if that was really a thing before Wind Waker.
Um, I'm trying to think. I think
I mean, Ocarina of Time had like dynamic shifting music that would like go to different parts in
The
different
only
situations.
dynamic
But
team in Ocarina of Time is the Hyrule Field team.
right,
Depending on if you move around, if you are fighting an enemy, if it's
right.
evening, the song is going to change.
Mm,
So it was done. I think it was even done to a bigger extent than Wind Waker in
mm.
OOT.
Yeah, I mean, Wind Waker is just so many examples, right? Like, because you're on the boat, and if you stop moving, like the brass drops out, for instance. I think the percussion does
I think
too.
that's Twilight Princess. Oh wait, no, both. Actually, yeah, both Twilight Princess and Wind Waker did that.
Yeah, that's a great trick.
You're
Yeah,
right.
but
And
there's just so
I
many
even did
examples of
that
that.
on the engine in the game as well.
Oh, okay, yeah.
In the unflooded engine, like if you stop moving, the brass also stops.
The grass stops
I'm gonna
moving.
call it the unflooded engine.
Yeah, call it the unflooded engine. Yeah,
Yahoo!
that's hilarious. I
Yeah,
guess yeah. I'm curious
yeah, I did. The,
about Twilight Princess. To circle back to just our discussion of cut content earlier, I know we were talking a lot about like Skyward Sword, kind of
yeah.
receiving possibly a lot of Wind Waker cut ideas. What do you think Twilight Princess got? Because of course we're going back to Hyrule in that game. So do you think the developers like carried over some of the things they were thinking about for Wind Waker's Hyrule?
The only thing I think they kept, I think, was the that they cut from Wind Waker and that they added in Twilight Princess was the ability to go underwater with the
Mm-hmm.
iron boots. That's the only thing I think they kept throughout the
Mm-hmm.
entire game. Because when you think about it, when you equip the iron boots in Wind Waker, go in the water, it just unequips them.
Right.
And then if you go look at the items code in the game, there's an unused item called the water boots.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, my guess is that you just cut that and added it in Twilight Princess because it made more sense, right? Because when Twilight Princess had transparent water, right?
Right.
So you could see under it. Like what if Wind Waker Link goes underwater? Is the screen just gonna go all blue?
Right. I wouldn't know how to code that. Right.
Yeah, like or you have to sacrifice the art style and make the water transparent.
And that's been a challenge for my project, right? Because I know there's people that want either underwater locations like the Water Temple in Ocarina of Time. That's an iconic location. It'd be great to see that, but the water's opaque, and I don't want to compromise that. So that's been a
Yeah,
challenge, just
no.
kind of to navigate that. And I think I'm choosing like just to keep the water opaque. It's true to the art style. Like I think that that's more iconic. Um, but I don't know. Like I could change my mind.
I think Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom did it perfectly. They
Mm-hmm.
had the limitation that you couldn't go underwater.
Right.
And if you look at Tears of the Kingdom, they have the Lenaru mines,
Mm-hmm.
mini dungeon where it's like you're in the sewers and there's a lot of water.
Mm-hmm.
And I think something like that in Wind Waker could work very well, where you don't have to go underwater, but there's like platforms on the water moving around.
I think that's a good example. Yeah, yeah. Like you don't have to dive underwater, but there could have been
You
whirlpools
cannot.
that suck you into a little sewer or something.
You could have a whirlpool. Actually, that's something they added in Four Sword Adventures that I think could have
Yeah.
been added in Wind Waker,
Mm-hmm.
where at specific locations, if you enter the whirlpool, you get sucked down into like another section of the map which is underwater.
That's right. That's right. That's a great game. I love Four Swords Adventures.
Yeah, maybe that was also a feature in Wind Waker they canceled.
Yeah, I wonder because there's whirlpools like I mean in front of like Jaboon's cave and with the giant squids, tornadoes, kind of have a
Yeah,
similar thing, but I don't think there's anything that sucks you into like a chamber below the water.
yeah.
I don't think so.
Hmm. Well, I mean, there's the light ring that warps you to
Yeah.
Hyrule,
Mm-hmm.
but that's more like a. Also, what's the point of the light ring? Like, if I can just jump on the boat, sink it myself.
Right, right.
Like, what's the
Well, it's
point of the
magic,
light
right?
ring?
There's a magical barrier.
Well, oh, that's why you can breathe underwater. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's what it is.
But we saw that Link couldn't breathe underwater when he uses the light ring for a couple seconds. So, is it because he got close to the castle that he can breathe, or is it because the light ring magic that he can? So, yeah, that's never answered.
Wind Waker logic, it almost makes sense.
Yeah,
It's so close to making sense.
almost. Yeah.
I don't know. That's a whole confusing thing. And like, if anyone like scuba dives, could they see Hyrule, or is it like magically protected because, like, Link passed the trials at that point. Like he had completed the Tower of the Gods. So like story wise, is that why Hyrule revealed itself to him, and it may not reveal itself
There
to
are
other people?
scuba divers, and we
Theories.
see the scuba divers in Wind Waker.
Yeah, right.
The salvage corps
The salvage
on
core.
some
Yeah,
islands, did they have scuba dives, and so they could see Hyrule? I guess I don't know.
that's the question. I don't know. I
Yeah,
know that I've gotten into lore debates about that stuff, and lore debates are always tough because it's like it's always about gameplay, right? Like the story is I think Wind Waker makes its story complement the gameplay well, but there's still
yeah,
stuff that's like, well, it doesn't completely make sense. And like Hyrule was frozen in time, so does that mean that, like, if you were scuba diving, would you see something completely different? But like Link kind of transported himself through time by going through the portal. Man, I don't know.
yeah. Yeah, like if you're not Link and you go to Hyrule, do you get frozen in time like Hyrule?
Right,
Is the
or do you
question.
see a like a present state version of it while Link saw the past state version of it?
Yeah. Also, I cannot explain the grayscale effect.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you go to Hyrule, they obviously want you to see that it's frozen in time, so they make it grayscale.
Right.
But fun fact, in Twilight Princess, during its development,
Mm-hmm.
the Twilight Zones were actually grayscaled like Wind Waker.
Oh, the Twilight Realms.
The Twilight Realms was grayscale; it was completely black and white except for Link.
Interesting.
So just like Wind Waker, and before they added the the just the bloom and the stronger colors.
Mm. Oh, I love the look of that
And
Twilight Realm, man.
yeah, I think they kind of messed it up in Wind Waker HD where they made it sepia.
Yeah.
I don't know why they made it sepia. I think it was because it was easier to code when they ported the game from GameCube to Wii U.
Hmm. I don't get it. Like, there's stuff about Wind Waker HD that I respect as a port, but I don't know, man. I think there's stuff with the bloom. I think it's too much. I appreciate them for trying because it makes the original
I
look
just want
better.
it on the Switch.
But
Nintendo, if you're listening, just put it on the Switch, please. I'll buy it.
please,
I'll buy 10 copies.
right? I mean, it's only released like on the GameCube and Wii U, and you can play a GameCube disc on the Wii. So I guess it's available on 3 consoles technically, but
Yeah,
it's hard to get GameCube discs. They're so expensive. The Wii U was not many people have that console. So I know a lot of Zelda fans that have never had access to Wind Waker, and we want it.
yeah,
I
no.
want to show it to my friends.
Yeah, no, even then, like, even if they don't release Wind Waker HD, I'm guessing what they're gonna do at some point is just have GameCube Virtual Console,
Yeah,
and then we're gonna see Wind Waker on that. But I feel
maybe.
like that's kind of lazy, Like I'm kind of like that's the second best option, but I would like Wind Waker HD.
I agree.
I don't want. I don't want just emulated GameCube version.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's strange at this point in the Switch's life cycle too, and we don't know how close we are to a Switch 2. Maybe that'll have a GameCube Virtual Console.
That'd be
I don't
cool.
know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything more you want to discuss about cut content of the game?
No, no, I think that pretty much covers it all. We had a good discussion about Skyward Sword, which I didn't even think about until we
Yeah.
started. But now I kind of want to replay the game.
Well, this is a great game. I fell in love with Skyward Sword when the HD version came out. I recommend it to anyone
Oh
that's
yeah,
cautious of it. I didn't like it at first, but then I played the HD version, and that changed a lot for me. So I recommend it to anyone
yeah,
that's teetering on the edge.
yeah, definitely. And it might be linear at times, but the design and the puzzles are really good.
Yeah, some of my favorite dungeons. Some of them.
Yeah, I would say my favorite in the game is probably the first one, just because of how simple it is, but it
Mm.
introduces you to so many things in the game.
It's controversial.
Oh really?
I don't know. I know people that hate Skyview Temple.
Oh really? I think it's my favorite.
Well, it's just that my theory, and I got stuck on this too, so I get it. There's like a puzzle where you have to find a crystal, and it's like below a bridge or something, It's like I spent
Yeah,
like 20 minutes looking for it and couldn't find it. My theory is that that's
yeah.
what I don't know. I've seen people talk online about it. I don't know if that's the reason, but I know I got
I think
stuck on
that's the
that.
second time you visited.
What?
I don't know, but yeah, I see what you mean.
I don't know.
It's not a perfect game. No game is perfect.
But they get close.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, that's how it is with all the Zelda games. I mean, I love them all. They all each have their own different issues. How about this? Final question on the podcast. With that in
Okay.
mind, um, what do you want to see from the future of the series? Is there anything in Tears of the Kingdom, for instance? This is the series' latest entry. What do you want for the future of Zelda?
I want them to go fully experimental with the next Zelda game and have a survival game where you
Ooh,
build your own base, where you build your own Hyrule from scratch.
ooh.
Even more so than because in Tears of the Kingdom, Hyrule is destroyed and you rebuild it with the NPCs, but this is more a job for the NPCs, No, I want a game where you're sent to like a giant new kingdom with
Mm,
nothing in it, and I want you to build the kingdom kind of like Animal Crossing style. You build the village, you build everything, and you craft the things yourself.
mm-hmm. That'd be really cool.
So almost like a survival game, Zelda game.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want.
I'd like to see that. Nintendo, if you're listening, we have some more suggestions. That's awesome. I hope they're listening. I know they want YouTube. They got it.
Yeah,
Maybe they I gotta make sure these videos are being translated. If anyone is in the comments and wants to upload a transcript for free in different languages, you're welcome to.
yeah.
But anyway, any closing thoughts? Any new projects that you want to plug? Tell the viewers about?
Definitely follow the Ship of Harkinian.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure you're gonna have a link to it in the description. It's the Zelda PC port for Ocarina of Time, and we're working on Majora's Mask next.
Nice.
So Majora's Mask is getting a PC port with a bunch of things like 60 FPS and widescreen.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate the work that y'all are doing. Thank you so much for being on
Thank
the
you.
show, Melon.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a pleasure as always. I mean, there's things that we could have kept talking about. Maybe we'll just have to have another
Yeah.
episode for that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm down.
Everyone, thank you all so much for watching. I'll let y'all go.